Paintball nerd.
Today's guest on Paintball Nerds Fun 5 started playing paintball in 1986. He played his entire career with Bad Company. He's been the director of business development at Kingman. He's the president of the NXL. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Tom Cole.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, Tom. Man, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
I used to watch videos when I was a kid and watch Bad Company play and hear company. And I always thought, what does that call mean?
It's G1. It's a G, basically. It's a G.
Oh. Yeah. So most videos I watched, you guys were saying company off the break. So you're getting kills off the break.
Yeah, we actually, we used to get a lot of kills off the break. We were kind of like, we were younger than most of the teams when we kind of started. So we tend to be a tad bit aggressive, trying to, basically one of my front guys' joke was always, I'll find out where they're supposed to start and I'll make that my bunker for the other team. So we kind of did that. And it's funny, everybody used to think we didn't keep count too with the companies because it was just like a bunch of companies get yelled, right? But we actually had another secondary code that gave us the kill count. So,
what was that code?
It changed through time because people started learning it or whatever. But it was probably R1 would have been a good one. We've killed one or something like that. So we changed that code throughout time all the time. Sometimes we had the differential, right? We're up 4 or whatever.
So you started playing paintball in 1986, and we chatted a little bit earlier, and there was no pro division, right? It was just open. Everyone played the same division.
So when we showed up, we went to our first national tournament was the Masters, 1989, and they didn't have a pro division. And we played like the Lords of Discipline, which became Aftershock. We played Sudden Death, which is a team that Dave Youngblood. And so we, you just got thrown right into the fire. And the advantage back then, though, was, those teams only had like 3 years experience. So even though we were new, they were only been doing it since, 86 as well on the national circuit, right? Paintball was so young and in its infancy that there wasn't like a need for the different teams.
Right.
Level. So
got it. So was Bad Company always a Kingman team?
No, we were initially sponsored by Tippmann. Tippmann was our first sponsor, and then we went to Automag, and then we went to Angel. We were a Brass Eagle team, which Brass Eagle at the time was the exclusive distributor for the Angel. So so we shot the Angel for a while, and then we went to Spider.
Interesting, because it's I guess the public perception, Tom, is that Kingman or Spider is an entry level gun, right? And not necessarily a tournament gun. So did you feel that when you guys were competing with them, was it like a disadvantage, or what were your thoughts on that?
It was definitely a disadvantage. I would have said that then, though, I guess. But,
no, of course not.
Definitely a disadvantage. We were using mechanical guns back when people were starting to use ramping guns. Now, there's different eras, right? So a lot of people remember the Spidernator era, where we started putting intimidators basically inside of Spiders. But in the beginning, we were just using E-framed guns. We used the Spider Extra, and we used a gun called the AMG. And we actually took top 4 at the World Cup in the pro division against everybody shooting the machine guns. There was no control or ramping or any of that stuff back then. So we were just
debounce.
So we actually developed a system. I don't know how we want to get into it, but we developed a system where we only shot the wires almost the whole game, with the center back trying to stop any of the middle moves. And we just tried to control the wires the whole time. Because back then, like your standard Todd Adamson move or Rich Telford move was you played the back corner and you looked out down the wire, and then you would shoot the wire for a minute, then you look inside, make sure everything was going okay inside. And every time you came to re-engage, that was a risky proposition. So we just stayed on those lanes. So every time those guys looked in, when they looked back out, there was balls whipping by their face. And we tried to train them to not look back outside. And then once they gave up the wire, because they were always getting shot at or shot, then we would start moving up the wire and kind of wrapping around and shooting inside. It worked really well for us for a couple of years until everybody started figuring it out. So
do you think you would have done better if you guys had, let's say, actual intimidators or angels?
Yeah, we talk about that a lot at the Bad Company reunion get-togethers. Yeah, we think we would have done better. You know what I mean? But it did help us play better as a team together. And that was like the core Bad Company years, 2002, right? We're playing 10-man. But yeah, I do think we would have won with better guns, not even a question.
So were these what did you call them? Spider intimidators or whatever? Were they, okay. What is it?
We call them spimmies. A spimmy?
So were they available to the public or only Bad Company had them?
No, only bad. So basically, the Intimidator was built on the Spider platform. So literally every screw lined up except for the eyes. So we had to add eyes to our frames, and literally the Intimidator just slid right inside of it and worked exactly the same. Like,
so you just take out the cup seal and you add the little bumper thing that goes in the Intimidator.
Yep. And
interesting.
Because he had designed his gun originally around the Spider, I believe. So, and
I didn't know that.
So we worked with Bobby. I was some friends with Bob Long, so we worked with Bobby to kind of make that happen. So yeah, it was pretty neat. It was definitely neat. But the weird thing was we were in transitions and players, right? So we had a really good team when we were using the more lower end spiders, the real spider, the Spider Extra and the AMG. So we had like JC Whittington and Muzzy and all these great guys. And then when we made that transition, we had lost some of those guys, which is kind of relevant even today. But 2003, we lost some of our better guys. 2004 to other teams, and so we probably didn't have as strong a team when we went to the Spidernators or the Spimmies.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, Tom, you've been in it forever, man. You know everyone in paintball. Everyone knows you, and as a result of that, I'm sure you've got some amazing memories from the game. So, tell us about a memory that really sticks out for you in paintball.
Probably winning Pittsburgh. We won the Pittsburgh Mounds Field, the field that Tim brought the ICC back to. We won that in '95. That was our first pro win. So that was obviously pretty special. Up until then, really only 3 teams had ever won: the All-Americans, Ironman, and Aftershock. So we were the first team to break into that big mold. So that felt pretty good. You know what I mean? That's like the classic era of whatever. So from a team Bad Company point of view, that was pretty cool. There's another time, like on a personal note, one of the cool times is I was on the cover of a magazine, right? And it was just happened to be a random picture of us playing at the Amateur Open back in like forever ago. And I was at a Barnes and Noble or a Borders, and there was a kid like reading the magazine, and I was like talking to him subtly, trying to make him realize that I was the guy on the cover, but he never did realize. But so that was a cool moment on the personal level to show up at a bookstore and someone's reading a magazine that you're on the cover of. So
were you wearing goggles?
Paintball now, I like wearing. Yeah, I was completely playing. You couldn't tell it was me if you didn't know. Yeah. There was no way to tell it was me. I only knew it was me because of my shoes. We used to wear Nike Sharks, and no one else really Nike Sharks though. And
I still wear Sharks.
There you go. Yeah, no, they were just coming out then. So there's no way.
So when you guys won Pittsburgh on the Mounds, is there anything that stands out to you about that game? Is a particular move or anything that made that win special?
Yeah. So we were sponsored by Pro Ball at the time, and so was the Ironman, Bob Long's Ironman. And so we're playing on the Mounds field, and it was, we felt like it was fast paced. When you look back, it's probably not then, but we were playing pretty fast paced. Well, before that, we had switched paint. We had switched to Zap, which is Zap and Pro Ball were kind of like sister companies, and they didn't let Bob switch, or he chose not to switch, whichever way. And I decided to switch. And literally, we're working down the mounds, and I'm like the mid, and I roll out, and I get bounced on the shoulder. And I tuck back in, and I look, and I see it's a bounce. And then I come back out, and I shoot their back left corner guy on the mounds, which basically freed us up to go across the little jump there and just start mowing more Ironmen. So that was a big moment there. Yeah, I felt pretty good about that. Awesome. Switching the paint, right? So because equipment matters, right?
Yeah, but what made you guys want to switch? Were the Pro Balls bouncing?
Yeah, they were just bouncing a little bit. And so us knowing that, so then I got bounced and then went on and, whatever. It was good stuff.
Messed them up.
Yeah. And it's good to beat the Ironman, right? It's not changing, beat the Ironman. Back then they were pretty much the unbeatable, right? So.
What were there, the SC Ironman exist at this point, or was it just Bobby's men?
Just Bob. It was just one team, just one Ironman. Yeah. It wasn't for the next couple of years that little debacle happened.
Yeah, it's crazy how there became several iterations of the team. Like we have Bobby's men and we have Dave's men, and we have the OG, what's called the OG
Iron
Iron
Man.
Men.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone's kind of clamoring over this name.
Yeah, I mean it's a great name and it's got a great legacy in paintball. Actually, true story. Not many people know this, but I was offered to be the captain, which is what we had back in the 10-man days of the Ironmen when they did the split. Dave and Daryl Trent and all those guys, they brought me to a room with the Ironmen and asked me to come be captain of the Ironmen because they were getting rid of Bobby. I of course turned that down because I had my own team, but
yeah,
still flattering, still nice to
Interesting.
be right? Yeah.
So who do you think is the real Iron Man?
Any team that Bob Long's on. Yeah, to me, Bob Long was the team, right? He was the driving force of the team. I mean, they went through some time periods, right? Like you played for the Ironmen, right? So when it back then, unquestionably, Bobby's team was the real Ironman while we were still in that little era, but it quickly evolved to where the die Ironmen were the real Ironmen.
Legally.
The year with well, and the years with Todd and Billy and all those guys, Ollie Lang, I mean, all those people playing, like those end up being some of the iconic years, right? I mean, my Ironmen are the 95, 97 Ironmen, right? Like when you start getting up to the 2000s, that's once the real switch happened.
So when you go when we go to the ICPLs and you see Dirk and J-Man, and that to you is the Ironman.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. I think they're playing each other this weekend, so we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Tom, I mean, over these past many years being involved in paintball, do you have a teammate that you would call maybe your favorite teammate, favorite person to play with?
Coleman, Jimmy Coleman, for sure. I mean, I've had a lot of different eras, right? We go through some stuff, but he used to be my front guy, my snake guy, my soldier, right? Did whatever, he's fast. And so, yeah. And plus he was, he's my roommate. We stayed together the whole time.
There you go.
Yeah. So Coleman's my guy. Yeah, for sure.
So it's kind of like you back with the joystick and just kind of having him get the kills.
Yeah. Actually, that was one of my favorite tournaments other than the ones I played. We went to Aruba, I think. One of the tournaments we went to where you actually had outside coaching, like the old NXL style. And I just walked him joystick down the trail. Right. But,
nice.
Yeah. So.
How about favorite player to watch? And I mean, you've been in it for so long. So let's go with overtime, right? Greatest of all time, favorite player to watch.
That's a good one. I mean, the easy thing's Ollie Lang, right? He's dynamic. He's always running at the center. He's I would say Ollie Lang. Ollie Lang's probably the guy there.
Yeah, I mean he's fluid. Like the way that he moves is captivating to watch. Like it's incredible. It's like watching a fish swim. It's where he belongs.
Yeah, for sure. And then him coming back to World Cup, obviously that was great. I mean, he had I could have maybe played with that team and won, right? They were playing on fire and great, right? Put me in the center, I run up the gut, bunker a couple guys, look good. So I think that was the perfect storm for him. But yeah, I mean,
but he contributed, no doubt.
No, I'm not taking anything away from him. No, for sure.
Yeah.
It's amazing how well the old guys can still play. So we went and when we first started playing the ICC, we brought all the Beckham, the guys out of retirement, and we went up there and played. And I think we took second, maybe third, like one of those years that a lot of the pro guys were in there. So the stuff we learned during the 10-man era in that hyper competitive world still plays through. And some of the best players that we still have playing today came from that time frame. Almost all the dynasty guys, some of the X Factor guys, some of the Impact guys, a lot of those people came from that era. So
yeah. Well, I think Infamous proved though, the like with 10-man, they in previous years they'd stack their rosters with pro players and they were undefeated in 10-man.
They never lost a game. But so they stacked their players with pro players, but if that would have been, and I'm just going to pick on a team level, right? So level, if that would have been level, they wouldn't have been able to do that well. It's the mix of current tournament guys with the gun skills with enough. I mean, Travis played 10-man, right? They had Crystal Sawyer playing with him, you know.
True.
They had John Robinson or JR playing with him, you know what I mean? So I don't know how many of the old school guys they actually had on those rosters, but they still had a lot of dudes that were from that classic era. So that definitely helps. But I mean, the gun skills and the ability of people to play today is unprecedented, right? They're, you know, anytime I watch an old video, I'm like embarrassed of all our moves. So.
Yeah, I mean, the game has certainly evolved from a game to a sport. I think it's more, it's more physically demanding. But I'll tell you, what I miss is in 10-man and 7-man when single games mattered, and because of that, single moves mattered. You talk about on the Mounds field, you got that bounce there, and you came out, you shot the back left corner, and you guys just took over. You guys won the game, and that can happen in X ball. But then you got another point, right? So what I miss is the tension that 10-man and 7-man type formats, what that created, that tension of like this, everything I do in this game, this one game matters, whether we're going to move on or not, or win the tournament or not. I think that tension really adds to the excitement.
Yeah, I agree. And it definitely was, there's a couple of things that I like better. There's definitely some negatives to that one match format. I love the one match format, right? For many reasons, but the mental toughness it takes to play those games, right? Like when you're G1 in a game that's the only time you get to play against that opponent for all the marbles, that definitely takes some mental toughness to go up there and move down the snake or whatever you got to do to try and get to where you need to be. But the other thing is the heroes we've lost with the concede a little bit, right? So you think about for many years, you had three levels of heroes, right? You had the front guys that did some dynamic moves and got on the push videos and did that cool stuff, right? And then some of the best players were probably the mids that kind of filled in after that. We would call them a 2 today, but kind of filling in and kind of doing that stuff. But a lot of the games that come down to an epic win was won by like a Telford or a Bob Long or a Todd Adamson, right?
100%.
Matty Marshall, those stand-up guys that ended up winning a 3-on-2 or a 5-on-3 or whatever. It's usually that back line that held true. And today we would just concede, right? Yeah. So before you gave Telford the chance to pull off the 2-on-1 and get the win, you're going to concede. And so since we didn't have the concede, he had to fight tooth and nail to the end. And so to me that says a lot, right? It's you got to play the game to the end, and that's kind of what I like. And we still have that, you still come down to the end points, right? It doesn't matter how many points you play. It almost always comes down to that last point. The disadvantage of that old style, and I'll pick on Frank Connell, which is probably is the Frank Connell effect, or the Chris Losoy effect, right? So they could be losing and just create so much mayhem, and then the refs have to sort it all out, right? And it used to be this phrase, shoot them all, let the refs shoot them out. And so if you're going to lose no matter what, there's no reason to not push that limit on the rules and play like savages, right? And so it became hard to manage. And I just watched literally like a 720 video the other day, and literally everybody just would get shot and just put themselves right back in and try and mix it up again.
Yeah.
And so that put a lot more pressure on the refs, and a lot more of the calls were decided by referees, where now obviously the refs still influence the game, but there's always a chance for a comeback. And so it makes it less beneficial to stay in and play because you're playing down the next point. So there are some pluses, but I still like the single match play.
I do too. And I think you can incorporate some of the strict ruling that we see in the NXL with what we'll call them penalties. I don't even want to call them cheating, because like in the NFL, it's not called cheating. It's called a foul. It's called a penalty.
The problem with that, and so I do agree with that. The problem with and I call them draconian penalties. It's always everyone's solution, right? You come up with a penalty that's so severe that people don't want to do it. The problem is now the guy that's making the decision on the game is deciding if that penalty was called, and it swings the whole game. Just imagine in the NFL, they give you a touchdown for holding, right? That's kind of what paintball is. If you pull a 3-for-1 on a guy because you think they did something wrong and come to find out it was rub, that guy's decision just cost the game.
But that's how it is in the NFL. Like, look at the Super Bowl. There was a holding call, and I mean, the Chiefs were probably going to win anyways. But it was third or fourth down, and there was a holding call that was questionable, right? And that gave them the first down. So it's like, in the highest level of sports,
but
the
they still had
refs,
another
it's on their shoulders.
They had another play in paintball. You don't get another play. So I mean, so we're agreeing and we're disagreeing, right? Like that. I do agree that there's something to be said for that, and if we could tidy up the rulings, and the ICPL has gotten much better from the first day that we started till now. I believe we've just trained everybody to play cleaner because the penalties are coming. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just nostalgia for me. Like, that's the format, the single game format that like I grew up playing and competing in and watching, where like you said in Push, like I saw people become famous for a single action, for a single move, and it's like, and it's not for bad reason. It's because those moves mattered, right?
Right, and it's braver to make the move, right? Like, so if you want to, if you want to try and get the guy out of the center 50, back then you had one shot for that whole match forever. And if you failed or it was bad timing or whatever, you didn't do it. And so that's why I say strong mind or whatever, mental toughness, because the scared person just doesn't make the move, right? Exactly. And so then the aggressive teams or the guys with the mental toughness kind of prevail. My dog's definitely wanting to be in the shot.
Get him.
There's the new dog.
Man.
Just
you like dogs that look like the Grinch's dog.
Yes, I do like dogs that look like the Grinch's dog. Scruffy. Well, I mean, my older dog was more famous than me, so I can't have him better looking than me as well, right? So I gotta go for Scruffy. Yeah, but I mean, it's funny. So like, Leds is the one that always points this out to me, because I'm always like, well, we did this back in the day. You know what I mean? Why has it changed? And when you look at the numbers, though, it's absurd, right? Like, we had 56 teams play this ICPL, which when you're a classic guy, that feels like a big event. I mean, it felt pretty big, And then you go to the World Cup and it's 585 teams, there is a benefit to that other format, and each their own. But even back in the day when we thought stuff was huge, it was less than 50 teams.
Well, the numbers don't lie. I was at the ICPL event, and I was playing in the finals, and I looked up, and there was maybe 10 or 20 people watching. But you go to an NXL, and the stadium, the grandstands are packed. I don't know what Go Sports numbers look like, but I know people are watching that too. So, as nostalgic as I want to be, there's no debating it that the X ball format is drawing a bigger crowd.
And it's funny.
And that could be the marketing behind it. I'm not sure.
And that's I've had this debate with Justin Owen from the Saberwolves, right? Super smart guy, super polite. He's always like, you really just need to make everything go classic. And I'm like, come to World Cup first, right? And I took him and we sat in the VIP and all that fan. I mean, you can see the picture behind me, right? Like, it was pretty powerful. Now, some of that is the marketing, right? Because if you go back to the 2002 World Cup, there were people watching, right? There was a lot of that energy there. So it does come down to marketing. I'm not saying we couldn't recreate that and kind of make that. It's just a scary move, right? It's just a scary move. I prefer to have two paths, right?
Exactly.
Hedge.
I think you're doing it the right way.
Hedging. I always want to hedge, right? So if the 10-man classic starts to get 100 150 teams, then maybe we'll be onto something. But so, but cool. 10-man is my favorite format, right, of all times. 10-man in the woods unquestionably is my favorite format.
So somehow I got you talking about work. So I'm gonna change the subject on you.
Right, no worries.
Tell us about your most cherished paintball item.
Oh, I actually brought it. I have our jersey, a Bad Company jersey from, I'm going to say 19. I got a weird screensaver here, don't I?
That's badass, though.
Can you see it? Do we got it?
I saw it, and then it went away.
Yeah, there
it is.
So there's our Bad Company jersey from 1995. It's
that's so sick.
That's what we wore back in the day. And the neat thing is we were one of the first teams to put that, like, a big bright color on our jersey. Back then, almost everybody wore camouflage exclusively. So we had red barrels and we had the red Bad Company thing on our back. And so that was
So
kind
what
of
years
coming
did
out.
you wear that bad boy?
Probably 93 to 96, 97, somewhere in that ballpark. So, and then we started, I mean, I wore this jersey through 95, but I might have changed out to a different jersey, but that's actually the one that I wore in 95. It's even got the slit in it for the packs, like we used to
Yeah.
cut the things in there back in the day. So yeah. Yeah, I'm tempted
That's
to break
awesome.
that out at some point, one of the ICCs or something.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it'll still hold up. It's not like it's a fragile garment, right?
Nope, Tim Schloss made good products, that's for sure.
Right on. So, Tom, give us some advice, man. What does it take to get to the top of paintball competitively? But let's also talk about industry wise, because I think a lot of people want to work in paintball. They want to create a career in paintball, which you have successfully done. So, give us some advice on both.
From the playing side, from my experience, you just got to work hard, right? You got to be willing to put in more time than everyone else, and just be out there banging it out. You know what I mean? And that's one of the challenges of paintball is it is very time consuming, right? You got to play. If you're not getting the reps and you're not getting your stuff, you're just not going to be that good. But you got to kind of, make your moves up through the ranks and make sure you're surrounding yourself with other good players that are going to test you. And I just saw a neat thing from the Super Bowl, the two brothers that both play, and now I'm gonna the Kelsey brothers, right? They were talking about the calls and all of that stuff, and they're basically like, if you're blaming the refs or you're blaming a call, that's like a loser's mentality, and it's fine to like bitch at the refs or bitch about the call and go try and get the call overturned or whatever you do in your own little world, but in your own mind, you've got to know. That you can't leave it up on the line to the referees, right? And I always say that, like, and I had an incident at the NXL, but where I told a guy, like, if you're the leader of the team and every time you come back and you want to blame the referees on every game you lose, then your guys are never going to get better because they're always just going to come back and blame the referees because they know that's already the excuse.
You're just pushing away the responsibility.
Exactly. So you have to take responsibility, and you're going to get bad calls, right? Every sport has bad calls. You're going to get bad calls. Paintball probably has more than normal, but you've got to outplay the calls. And if you don't go back and look at your own reasons for losing, because it always comes down to one call. They're always like, and this is both from a player's point of view and an event guy, someone always comes like, that game cost us the tournament. I'm like, well, you played 8 games. You know what I mean? No one play really or call really cost you the tournament. You just weren't in a position to overcome that call. So as a player, you've got to have that mental toughness to come right back and say, let's get back on the saddle and go play. And from an industry side, and I am a little concerned because, there's a lot of us that came up in that same era. And Chris Ray always makes fun. He's like, how long do I have to be involved in this before I'm in the good old boys network? And I'm like, I don't know, a couple more years. But, like there's, Billy and John Rathburn and I'll just stick with those two. But like, Bergie, I mean, all these different people that are in the industry, Chris from Die, I mean, we've been around forever. And I don't know if there's a new crop of people that are wanting to be a part of the industry and kind of fill those roles as players. Right? So back in the day, like the players kind of became the industry leaders, right? So, and that's one of the challenges, right? Like I run the NXL now and everybody just thinks of me like I'm corporate Tom or something, but I played forever, right? And that gives us insight into what it takes to play. And I actually think these companies, especially the people playing the ICC, I mean, Billy played great at this last ICPL, right? He is the president of the largest company in paintball, right? And there he is out there playing 10-man, and he played great. And I think that puts him in a better place to make decisions within the company. So we need these players to make this next step. But for whatever reason, I don't know if the next crop is really looking to do that or in a position to do that. And I'll give you one of my examples. I'm hanging out with Ali Lang, and we're in Malaysia, right? And we're over there playing a tournament. He's playing in a tournament, and I'm there as a representative of Kingman. And we took a Uber or a taxi or whatever to the hotel. And I said something like, I just got off the phone with Paul Fogel. And he's like, who the hell is Paul Fogel? And I'm like, Paul runs the largest paintball park in the United States. Is one of the original people that started 15-man and runs the largest big game in the United States. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, you really got to spend some time. And obviously, Ollie's a special situation on many levels. But, if you want to move up through the industry, knowing who the best snake guy is not the best thing to know. Know who the largest park is, or who's the best marketing park, or who's the best store. You got to know everybody in the industry, and so they need to broaden their horizons a little bit and kind of get that out there.
Yeah. I mean, what I'd add to that, Tom, is it's also the willingness to persist, right? I mean, you started at Kingman as a warehouse guy. Billy Saransky started as a warehouse guy. Chris Williamson at Dye started working at Velocity Paintball as a shop kid behind the counter,
Right.
and got a sales job at Dye. I started at Dye building barrels, like so. To get to the top of the industry, I believe you have to have a willingness to work harder than what you're paid, what you're compensated, and be willing to stick it out in the industry regardless, and just stick it out, and eventually you'll get there. Because if you look at all the guys at the top of the industry, it's not that they just arrived one day, right? They started from the bottom and worked their way up.
You also, and I just talked to Billy about this at the ICPL. You got to want to learn, right? So like,
Yeah.
and I use being Billy because I talk to him quite often. But anyhow, so he didn't start out with all that knowledge, right? Like he was not a business guy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to swear I know his complete background, but we've had to learn, both me and Billy. You know what I mean? I was just a paintball player. I actually worked construction as a laborer before I got into paintball. So like we've had to learn, and you have to constantly try and expand your stuff. You can't just say like, I'm not going to use Instagram because I'm a Facebook guy. I'm using that as a metaphor, but like you have to constantly be pushing your boundaries on what you want to do. It's doing it the old way is not always the best way, or you know what I mean? And so you've got to always be willing to learn and kind of try and branch out and look at other industries and stuff and try and see how they're doing stuff to improve the way you're doing stuff. So
very good. All right. Well, Tom, tell us about what you're most thankful for that paintball has given you.
The ability to travel. So I've been able to travel the world, you know what I mean? And I like to say it's meet a lot of people, but I like the traveling part. It's funny, when I was a kid, and my dad was like, I had to quit work to go play paintball. I was going to a big game, actually. I went to a big game. I'm probably 16. And he's like, at some point in time, you're going to have to grow up and stop playing and start working for a living. And I was like, Dad, the only reason I'm working is so I can afford to play paintball. So if I didn't have paintball to go do, I might not be working at all. And I literally thought that I would play paintball. I would be good at paintball, whether that's real or imagined. I would be good at paintball, and then I'd work my way up into the industry, and I would have the job that I currently have today would be the job that I have. And I'd be flying around the world, organizing tournaments around the world. So that worked out great, right? And I should say that's everybody's goal, right? But it's been an amazing journey, right? And now I've been to 6 of the continents, played paintball in all of them, you know what I mean? And so it's 6 of the 7. I do know there's 7. But yeah, so it's been an amazing journey that way. So
what's the best place you've been, your favorite spot?
South Africa and Botswana for sure. It's not even
nice.
Close yet. Yeah, no, you should go. So South Africa's great. I have some good friends there, and paintball's still alive there, moving on. And then Botswana's a super wild place to go and take pictures and kind of like do the wildlife thing. And that's one of the funny things I tell her, because I do take like 3 weeks off at the end of the season, and people are always like, that seems a bit extreme, because I go to Africa and I go in the bush and I'm out of contact, right? Which causes me some problems occasionally. But it's funny, like when you've been in paintball forever, every person they just want to talk shop. And I love talking shop, right? But in order to come back and want to do it again, you need a break. Like literally, I go to a wedding, the people sitting at my table at the wedding are going to be paintball people. And so they're going to be like, to ask me how many layout weekends we should have, and arguing about whether pros should be allowed to switch teams midseason, right? And this has been going on for, I'm afraid to even say it, 35 years I've been doing this, something like that. So I like to get away and take that little bit of time off, so I come back excited. And the whole time I'm there, I'm thinking about paintball stuff, and I'm always, we call it the Valkyrie plans. I'm always coming up with some crazy idea to kind of try and do something different or whatever. But it's a good place to kind of like get restarted or rebooted. So
yeah. Are you aware that you're a paintball nerd?
am not aware of that. No, I guess I would say I'm a paintball nerd. I've never been as good with the guns. Everybody knows like the guns, and they're like, that's the autococker from 1997 and all that stuff. I'm not that guy. I'm more like I know who ran what tournament and what team did what kind of paintball nerd.
Well, there's varying layers of paintball nerdness.
Yeah.
So you're in there.
And I like big games. I know everybody's going to think that's weird. Like I think playing scenario games, as long as you're like trying to do the missions and stuff, I think they're really cool. So
they're fun.
They're fun. They're fun. So I beat Matty Marshall and Mike Paxton at a big game. So, I mean, they shot me 4 million times, but we got the mission. So
that's part of it. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time here. Is there anything that you'd like to part with for the paintball community?
I'll give you one thing. I just want to remind everybody to appreciate the people, not necessarily me, but the people that like organize the teams and stuff, right? Like the Dave Painters and the Bart Yakimics and the Dave Baineses and I'm gonna go down the list further. But everybody that's like building a team, Dave Pando, right? The guys that are doing the grunt work, that whole keeping a team together is a nightmare, right?
Oh yeah.
Especially in today's world, right? And so that guy deserves a lot more appreciation, and I can go through a list of them. Rennick, building them for this thing, Todd Adams and recruiting for the ICPLs. That's a lot of work. And you just really need to be thankful to that guy at your park or your field or your team, whatever level you're on. There's a guy organizing stuff, and you should appreciate that guy because he's putting in a lot of work to make sure we can all play the game, right? So
cool. Awesome. Anyone you want to thank?
Oh yeah, I thank my wife. As I said before, I'm always talking about paintball. So she has heard the same. I'm always lobbying, right? I'm like calling. Let's say it's the 1 week practice, right? So I got to go through this process to do the 1 week practice. So I call like my people who give me advice, and then I have to call the people on the fringe, and then I have to call the people that I hate, and I go through basically the same little tirade for like 3 weeks, 8 hours a day of talking to people about whatever I'm currently lobbying. And she hears that story over and over and over again. And then I'm like, oh, and guess what, honey? We're going to go to dinner with Chris and talk about paintball stuff again. And so she's a real trooper. So I'm sure she gets frustrated, but she doesn't let me know about it that often. So we do appreciate it. So
cool. Thanks, Tom.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.